I'm Dave Becker, founder and CEO of First Internet Bank, with customers in all 50 states. First Internet Bank is proud to serve those who have served from our headquarters right here in Fishers, Indiana. We're also very privileged to have several employees who are veterans as well. On behalf of all of us at First Internet Bank, thank you, brave men and women, for your service. We're grateful for the sacrifices you have made for our country.
I've been continually impressed by the number of veterans that we have living in our community. I think it demonstrates just the quality of our residents here in the city of Fishers, and they exemplify public service, and we're happy to have them here in the city of Fishers.
My motivation for entering into the military really came down to wanting to do more. I felt like, for me personally, I felt like, school was good and all, but I wanted to be able to serve my country better. I wanted to make a difference somehow, and that really got the ball rolling. I mean, I was really young when I decided I wanted to join. I was probably about 14 when I knew for sure that I was going to go in the military, and and even though my parents really fought me on it, I knew that it was just something I wanted to do. And so that got me going. And then definitely when 9/11 happened, that really sealed the deal for me personally.
I served about 7 years active duty in the United States Navy, and I continue to serve as a reservist in the U.S. Navy Reserves.
I served 4 years in the United States Navy. A good portion of my service was in Southern California, Washington, D.C., and Maryland, and Vietnam.
So I was in the Army from 2009 to 2013. I joined right out of college, so I didn't do ROTC, I did Officer Candidate School. So graduated from Boston University and went right into training right after that. I served a bunch of different places. Spent a lot of time at Fort Knox, went to Fort Benning, spent a year in Korea, and then I finished up my time in the military at Fort Drum, which is a base in upstate New York. So
I've always wanted to do something like that, and half of my family was in the Corps, in the service. So, and my auntie, who retired as a gunnery sergeant, she inspired me to go in.
And so I was drafted, and I went through my basic AIT, trained one section of troops, then I went to Vietnam. In Vietnam, I was there 8 months or 10 months, and I got an early out. They were downsizing Vietnam, and the troop pullout was in effect. Anybody with 120 days less left in the military got an early out. I had 117 days left.
Well, I chose the Marines because I wanted to fly. Had never flown before, and going through college, Ithaca College up in New York, I was approached by an officer selection officer who was a Marine, and had approached me and said, would you like to fly? And I said, absolutely.
So I went to Penn State University, and my senior year, I decided I thought I would want to be a military officer, mostly because I've always been a really patriotic person. I went to visit the Navy officer selection officer first, because that's what I thought I might want to do. And then I went to meet the Marine Corps officer selection officer, and he was extremely physically fit, really sharp looking, and he challenged me and said, do you really think you could do this? And that's basically all it took, because if somebody tells me I can't do something, then I want to do it.
So, my background, I started off as an enlisted infantryman, and from there, then I went to officer candidate school, and then became an officer in the infantry, and then spent 22 years in the infantry, 5 deployments. It's been a wild ride.
when I was a young kid, which I'm giving away my age, but I was kind of headed down a wrong path. And my uncle was in the service, and I've had several other family members that were in the service, and I thought that that would be a good way to go. I had heard from other friends of mine that it was a good gig, you know.
When I retired in 2012 from the Army, I had been at Camp Atterbury for about a year and a half, moved an active duty brigade to Camp Atterbury, and really enjoyed the Indiana area, the Department of Veterans Affairs, the programs that they have here for veterans across the state, and that's what really drove me to move here.
Well, we knew that this was an evolving, vibrant community that we wanted to be a part of, and so we did the whole trend hipster type thing in Broad Ripple, and then post Broad Ripple we decided, hey, we're going to have some family, and Fishers was the perfect place for that.
So I'm a product of the city of Fishers. My family moved here when I was young, 8 years old. Went to the school system. I'm a 2001 HSE grad, but moved out east and eventually got into the military. But what brought me back to the city of Fishers is my wife and I both being from here, and having our first child, and deciding this is a place we want to raise our family.
I love Fishers, and when the kids were in high school and we would have family come visit, we'd drive up and down 116th Street and say, this is our main drag. This is where we live. This is how it feels. And we're glad to live here. Well, lately, in the past 4, 5, 6 years, we've had the opportunity to be part of this overt expressions of patriotism with various ceremonies and such. And it's a real privilege. It's also a lot of fun to speak truth into people who are willing to listen and learn about the difference between Armed Forces Day or the 4th of July or Memorial Day or Veterans Day. And then they come up after the ceremony and they say, wow, I'm glad I was here. I didn't know that. And then you go, click, because there aren't a lot of military people in the environment, but there are a lot of veterans. And then there are even more civilians who've never served. And we're a community with sort of an ace in the hole. And that's these folks who have served the country, and nobody's walking around trying to look like a Superman. But we are proud of our service, and this environment lets us show up and be part of it. It's okay to be an American and to have a degree of engagement that military service represents. And that's very satisfying. A lot of people are retired in their heads, but not in their hearts. And what we get to do is we get to stoke the heart up a little bit, and people become more engaged. They're not put out to pasture. They're here and they've got something to contribute. And you see it at our ceremonies. They're very cross-generational. Yeah, it's awesome. It's a great place. It's a patriotic city, and we're glad to be part of it.
Yeah, I think that's the one great thing about the state of Indiana. First of all, it is probably the most patriotic state in the union. If you're in uniform and you go out to eat, you don't expect it, nor do you really even want it. But I can tell you 9 times out of 10, our meals are getting paid for. People are giving that and thanks to us. And it's really hard. That's hard for us to accept that. I will tell you that Fishers even goes to another level on that, because there's a value that they put on service here in Fishers that it really can't be measurable.
I'm really appreciative of my Indiana roots, and appreciative for my time in Fishers, Indiana, growing up in Fishers, and appreciative of Butler University and just the humble roots of growing up in Indiana. I think truly living in different parts of the country now, we are really fortunate to have a strong-knit community that protects one another and is patriotic and supports our service members, and because there are areas in this country that don't. So I really think Fishers has been a blessing in my life growing up. and if it's now when I come home and visit.
Kids were in elementary school at Fishers Elementary, Cumberland Road.
Cumberland Road.
Would bring in all my aviation stuff, and they would try it on and
They
let me
loved it.
like explain what I did and why I did what I did. And then when they grew up, we had neighbor friends that would invite me as their guest.
Yeah.
And
We were the bring
the
event
honor.
to school day.
Yeah, and it was awesome. In fact,
Yeah.
I'm getting chills right now just
thinking about it.
Yeah, I love my community for a whole gauntlet of reasons. Our schools, the place I can take my kids, but I am most proud of the fact that our community and our city honors our veterans and those have fallen. So it means the absolute world to me. When I was deployed to Djibouti, Africa, what the city did for myself and for others that were deployed by taking care of our yards and taking care of our sidewalks and driveways when it snowed is huge. It's massively impactful. Both the actual doing of just the gesture means a lot. So I know Fishers is far from any major military base, but I would say we are among the very best as far as supporting our military.
I've worked for the city for 23 years and a couple of months now. And that whole time they have supported me while I've been in the military. When I got orders to deploy, they told me that if there was even a chance that I was going to lose money because the Army might pay me less than what I'd make here, they'd make me good. They'd hold my job for me. They'd hold my position for me. When I came back, it was seamless. It was right back to work. Any help I need, get into that. They continue to pay my salary while I'm at annual training when I was in the National Guard. So 3 weeks a year, Fishers was actually taking care of me while I was doing that service. And that is not normal. That's, again, thousands of brothers and sisters that I've served with. Maybe 2 of those people had a similar kind of arrangement with their employer. Everyone else, it's like you're on unpaid vacation while you're at training. So it's Fishers as the city has bent over backwards, in my opinion, for people like me that served, and it's really appreciated.
When we moved up, I went to Fishers High School, then over to Hamilton Southeastern. And after Southeastern, I did a stint in the military, 1970-71. And I did basic training in Fort Knox, Kentucky, AIT in Louisiana, Fort Polk. And then I went on to 2 other different types of training. And when I went overseas to Vietnam, I was a buck sergeant. And flew into Da Nang, was processed into the 101st Airborne Division at Camp Eagle. And that's just outside of Phu Bai, 70 miles north of the DMZ. And our primary function was reactionary force, road security, convoy escort. And we were semi-busy.
A deal of my memories are obviously of Vietnam. I don't believe that there's a day that passes that I don't think about it. They're not great memories in terms of being nice memories. They're just memories. I was 20 years old when I was there. And not only is that a long time ago, but I was a pretty unworldly, naive young man when I landed in Vietnam. And it didn't take long for me to learn that it wasn't a great environment to live in.
After boot camp, I was stationed in Camp Pendleton, right on the West Coast. It was beautiful, weather's awesome. But I was stationed there for all 4 years that I was in the Marines. And during that time, I served 2 tours to Iraq, and they were both very different. And my first tour, it actually happened less than about 6 months after I got out of boot camp. I went through School of Infantry, And then they kind of did some training outside of School of Infantry after I hit my platoon, my battalion. Then they shipped us out right away. And I wasn't sure what to expect. I don't think really any of us were. We were all very young. But when we landed, we realized that we were in a very different Iraq than the initial invasion. For this tour, we were tasked out with just keeping tabs on a small farm town. We were literally in a fortified farmhouse that we had taken over, like stacked sandbags up on the walls, and we would observe people coming in and out of the town. We would go around, shake hands, get to know the people, and pretty much try to get intelligence from them about where bad guys are hiding out at. And so that was really all of that first deployment. Again, not really what I was expecting, but definitely a good experience. And again, the culture shock behind all of it. Going from being able to contact my parents, friends, other loved ones anytime I wanted to we had one satellite phone that sometimes worked and usually didn't, and we had to disperse that between, or share that with 40 other people, and it was difficult at times, but it was a good experience, really. My second tour to Iraq, that one was a bit different. For this one, I was deployed to Fallujah, Iraq, and it was totally different from my first deployment. We had a lot more people to worry about, and the city was a lot more busy, and a lot of people were watching you, and we were controlling vehicles coming in and out of the city, and so we had to search vehicles. We were working with the Iraqi police and the Iraqi army, trying to train them up and pretty much prepare them for letting them take over and the U.S. troops pulling out. But yeah, it was, again, quite an experience. It was a lot of fun. I thought the military for me personally was a lot of fun. Being able to do training, pouring out all of yourself into something, and then going out and actually applying that in the field and feeling like you're making a difference was really important to me, and accomplishing that goal meant a lot personally.
It worked out. So I joined just a few months before Desert Storm, or Desert Shield, I guess. But, actually, my basic training and AIT, we did all at one station unit training. So instead of going for 2 months, I went for 4. And 1 week before we were supposed to graduate is when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. And so the unit that my company was going to go to after basic training said, close enough, put them on a plane. So we got on a plane with our gear for basic training. So we had old, rotten canvas from the Korean War and broken down machine parts and things. So it was a little bit of an adjustment to get there and come right out of basic. But I guess at least we were freshly trained. So.
The training was awesome, but like every person who joins the military, when you first get there and you put your feet on those yellow feet, you're like, oh the crap, what the crap did I get myself into?
And then we were deployed in December of '90. We went straight to Saudi Arabia, and I was probably, 15 miles from where? I don't know. We weren't at the same base, but we weren't that far apart. So I was there a little bit, almost 6 months after he got there.
Yep.
So that was the only time we were deployed together.
Really? Yep.
Yeah.
And then we participated in Desert Storm, and I flew 38 missions, combat missions in Desert Storm over Kuwait. And when we came home, then we were stationed together for quite some time, and then we were redeployed to Yuma, Arizona, and then from there, stationed.
We moved to Yuma, Arizona. We were stationed there, which is another beautiful spot.
Yeah, every deployment is different. No deployment is the same. And one of the things that my first deployment was to Bosnia, the former Yugoslavia, and that was a really great training ground because it was not a kinetic fighting deployment, but it was a deployment where you know, you wore the uniform, you had the big guns, you had all your bravado. But then what was important in that deployment was creating relationships with the local town people, with the mayors, with the police officers, and forming that bond so then you can be able to work with them. And, you know, a lot of times people see us in the military as only fighting. Well, that's only just part of our job. You know, the real main focus is to create those lasting relationships through shared purpose and understanding with the local people.
The Iron Curtain. Remember when we were in the camper and there were all these signs that said, warning, turn around? I missed them. And people were coming out of their houses waving their arms saying, stop, halt.
You weren't allowed to go any closer than 1 kilometer to the wall, which was
to the border, in the middle of the woods,
which was kind of invisible because it's in the middle of the woods, and unless you saw the sign, which we missed a couple of them, but the locals
would wave us off, and we'd come back, and it wasn't like we went, oh, we just dodged a bullet.
We kind of did.
You didn't want to be an international incident and get caught.
No, you didn't want to make the headlines in the paper.
Especially in a Volkswagen camper.
Just doing training with all these guys, you really get to know a lot of different people. A lot of these people probably I would never be friends with on the outside, but you're pretty much forced to be in the same really big room, sleeping in bunk beds really close to each other, and you get to know these guys. And before you know it, I mean, when you deploy, they become more like family. And when you are overseas and you don't have the communications, you don't have those loved ones around, you still feel like you're with your brothers. You still feel like you're with family. And a lot of times that's all we really had to rely on was each other. And I think that's the most important thing from the military, is learning that, you know, regardless of what, you know, beliefs you have, what like race, religion, anything like that, none of that really matters when it comes down to we're all people and we're all together in this same fight, you know. And I felt that was huge for me to learn that and to experience that.
A platoon leader in Korea, so in charge of about 16 guys, 4 tanks, and it's really unique in terms of a job and I guess a leadership experience, in that you kind of work, live all basically together for extended periods of time, and you really get a chance to invest your energy into your soldiers' lives. In terms of when I look at my military career as a whole, I don't know if I'd call it a career, but the years I was in the Army, that year in Korea with that team was probably most rewarding for me, just because you really established that close-knit camaraderie with them.
Yes, duty to the guys was a big thing. It was really good to have a family like that, and that's what they were. I've got thousands of brothers and sisters now because of all the different units I've been in.
For me, it was the people. The Harrier community is very small, and there's only 2 bases, Cherry Point and Yuma, and so you kind of get to know everybody. Even though I was a Marine Corps officer, became very friendly with all the wives, and I had awesome mentors in the Marine Corps. I always worked for basically the senior person on the base, and I just worked for some outstanding officers. So for me, it was the people, really. I mean, everybody was really solid and patriotic, and I just loved it. Everybody took pride in their country, and they're just great people.
Once you serve together, it's like you're all brothers, you know, and it doesn't matter. You could make a phone call and one of us would be there in a heartbeat, you know. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, the camaraderie is the most important facet of the military, in my humble opinion, and the thing I'll always look back on most fondly. I love what I do now, and I look forward to the new challenges I have in my life, but I know I'll never have that exact same experience, that exact same bond with the men and women I served with. There's just nothing that can quite compare to that. You know, sharing blood, sweat, and tears, and laughs and some hard and good times. There's just no comparing it.
And being a junior leader in the Army, I have built a family out of the people that, that are subordinate to me, that work with me, and it's really a great thing. They're really, truly like a family.
Because a lot of folks join for a lot of different reasons. One of them being God and country, whether that be college money, whether that be your socioeconomic situation. There's a lot of different reasons why people join the military. But what everybody will say is that at the end of the day, they fight, they live, and they serve because of the brother that's on their right and left. That truly is the reason why we sustain and why we're so effective, is that it's that relationship that, you may not be a blood relative, but you truly are a brother.
When I returned home from Vietnam, I came home as a medevac, which means I came home in an aircraft designed as a hospital plane, and landed at a Marine Corps Air Station in Southern California near my home, and was being transported to the Naval Hospital in Long Beach, California. And as we left the Marine Corps Air Station, several protesters tried turning my ambulance over. And myself and another wounded veteran were strapped down to gurneys in this ambulance, and we both ended up upside down underneath of the gurneys. That's how violent the attempt to turn the ambulance over was.
Coming home and being able to come home to family that's there waiting for you, like that feeling of reuniting with your loved ones is amazing. That feeling it still sits with me today. I can still think back on it and get that feeling all over again. And those are just the biggest moments.
Over the years, the tide has changed, and I feel so fortunate when they have the veterans get-togethers. They have the memorial service up on the square, which I go to. I don't go to all of them, but I go to selected ones, and I feel so proud to wear my colors and my hat.
And you heard the civilians just react to something that was bigger than them. Not sure they understood it, but it hit them. And it was all focused on these folks coming up here and just, they kind of getting the applause as they walked up, but it was so that when that Gold Star family walked up, they were surrounded by people who really understood their sacrifice.
To thank veterans, to probably, you can thank them, but get involved with veterans organizations is always a good way to do that. I know a lot of other veterans I've talked to, this is gonna sound really corny, but vote. That's a good way to thank veterans. And really just, I wouldn't say there's a right or wrong way to do it, but.
I just say thank you for your service. They're awesome people who've actually served and who have had to leave their families, for so many months or even longer than that. I just think they're awesome and brave people to join the service on their own free will to protect others.
Honestly, the best way to thank a veteran is just to say thank you.
A veteran seems warm and engaging. Go up to them, shake their hand. You can say thank you. Most veterans, myself included, it's a little awkward at first for somebody thanking you for something that you volunteered to do. But we get over it pretty quickly. Generally, we say thank you. I know there's...
Handshake, thank you for your service. That speaks volumes. Speaks volumes, definitely.
Yeah, to thank a veteran, it's pretty simple, but just to say thank you is always appreciated, and it's easy and it's meaningful. I try to encourage my kids to, anytime they see someone in uniform or see someone wearing a U.S. Navy retired hat or whatever it may be, to go up and just say thanks. It means a lot. And I think the other thing that folks can do is to just be aware and always enhancing or improving their patriotism, right? So, have an American flag outside of your house, or doing the little things in your community to encourage patriotism is a great way to thank a veteran, in my opinion.
The most important things for the City of Fishers over the last several years is to demonstrate that we take care of our own. We take care of those individuals that have made the ultimate sacrifice to step forward and be a part of our military service. We take care of not only those individuals, but we also take care of their families when they're actively deployed. I think it's important to demonstrate that as a community we care about those individuals willing to defend our liberties.